Hello everybody, welcome back to another platformer tutorial using Spritekit. Just one quick announcement, I've set up a Patreon account if you want to donate to this course. Okay, so on this video we're going to cover the hitboxes and hurtboxes. We're going to not use the physics engine because we want to be able to control which frames of the animation we want the hitbox to be active, like in a fighting game, and that with the physics engine we are not able to do that. And I'm going to show you real quick why not. So I'm going to use this thing. So let's say, for example, we have our character is going to be this green rectangle, and the enemy is going to be this other green rectangle. So if we want to have the animation have like the hitbox to appear on one frame, a specific frame of the animation, if we do something like this, we make the hitbox appear right here. With the physics engine we won't be able to detect this contact because the two physics bodies will be already over each other, and the way Spritekit handles the physics is that only on the time when it gets on the first pixel that it gets contact, it sends us the information, but if it's already here, it won't send us anything. Okay. First of all, we need to set up a couple of things. I have been trying to do this video several times now, so I already set up some stuff. The hurtbox I set up like this. It's a sprite node. We're going to set the image alpha here because we want to see where the hitbox is, and so I set the alpha to be 0.5, and when we stop debugging we can just change this back to 0, and then it won't appear on screen. The x offset and y offset is so you can have control over where the hitbox is inside the character. We could have our size in here, but it's going to take more time. And the hitbox we set up a little bit different. We still have the image alpha, the x offset. I'm going to set it to -20 so that it's in front of the character. I know negative is on the back, but since our assets, and let's say for example this one, it's facing that way, so we want to be negative for this side when it appears, and positive on the other. And the y offset is going to be a little bit down of the character, right? These x hit and y hit variables are going to be how much we wanted to push the character. So if we set up the x variable to be something like 3, then it will push a little bit. If we set it like 30, it will push the enemy a lot farther away. And the y hit is, for example, you want to do an animation for an uppercut, and you want the enemy to be sent flying upwards, so you can set it here. The life we're not going to be using right now, but it's fine if we set it up here. The hit stun is how much time the enemy character will be in a stun state by this hitbox. I set it up here at a default value of 60, but when we create a new hitbox, we can set it up differently. The ignore value is if we're ignoring this hitbox, and the ignore list. This is because we're going to be checking if we're intersecting with a hurtbox, but we don't want to. We just want to intersect with one of the hitboxes. I mean hurtboxes once, and do the respective damage. So we're going to add the hurtbox to this list, so that when let's say, for example, in Spritekit games, the frame each second is 60 frames, right? So if we didn't have this and we have our hitbox appear for 1 second, it will be hitting the enemy 60 times instead of 1. So that's why we have an ignore list here. Then some other thing that I already did. No. Okay, so let's get to coding a little bit more. So where do we start? Let's say we start with one other thing I forgot. I changed our animation component to be a little bit more clean. So I have a couple of dictionaries, one with the actions with a string as the key, and the action names. It's going to be another dictionary with a string as a key and a string as a value. I'm doing it like this so that when I have, so for example, in I already set up some actions. So for example, oh no, this is not it. Okay, so player actions. Okay, so for the attack, I set up an attack. You should do too. So if we have these are using the player, right? But if we have an enemy animation, for example here, the enemy idle, we just do a prefix here, or if you want to do a postfix after the name idle, and then just do the animation. That way, when we have in the animation component, we can also have this GK inspectable variable, so that when we have it, I have it set up so that when we have 1 as the value, it's the player, and when it's 2, it's the first enemy that we're going to set up here. So when we init, this is the init that comes from when we use the game scene instead of in the normal init where it comes from just code. So if we have it set up here, we can, for example, with our game scene, I'm going to show you. On the player, we have our component, animation component, and this variable that we have as GK inspectable is showing here. So if we have another character, we set it as an enemy, we can just change this value to 2, and that way it will use the other animations. I'm going to just show you a little bit. You can pause the video if you have an interest in how I did it. I have this function that basically all the repeated code that we have here, like every time we play an animation, I took it out and did a function, so that when we're coding, we just have this play animation function, and we just send the name of the animation that we want to play, and this one will grab the respective animation from the list. And since I only have the idle and the damage animation for the enemy, I just have them press here, and the rest will be the player animation, so that it has the jumping up and jumping down. I haven't been drawing much pixel art lately. So now that is out of the way, let's set up our hurtbox on the player. So on this character node, we're going to set up a couple of variables. I'm going to copy paste this code. Here I'm going to set up two variables, the hurtbox and the hitbox. The hitbox is going to be empty most of the time, only it's going to activate when we attack. This hit is another state, like for example, if we have been attacked, or I mean if we have jumping on it's just a flag to know if we have been hit or not. This hit stun is how much our stun value is, so we can have a countdown. We need to know which hitbox hit us, so that we can have information like how much stun value it had, how much it sent us flying and stuff like that. Here we have a couple of methods. I will change this, instead of set hitbox to create. And okay, so set hurtbox is going to be the method that we use to create our hurtbox for the character. We just create a new hurtbox with the color green, and the size is going to be whatever size they sent us in this method. The position is going to be whatever offset and y offset that we set on the hurtbox. The alpha is going to be the alpha value. The Z position is going to be 50. I set it up as 50, so it's always like right in the front, but so that we can see it no matter how many layers are there. And then we just add it, and it works the same with the hitbox. So, and for example, here if you want to set the attack to be sending the enemy character flying a little bit more, you can change it here when you create it, or you can create it in another time when we have the attack component. So now we need to set it up on our character, and I have this line commented here, so that we have the player. We set the hurtbox to be 15 and height 35, and so if we run this part of the game, we will have our hitbox. I mean our hurtbox. It's hard to be saying hitbox and hurtbox a lot of times. So okay, so we have our hurtbox, and now if we see, we have the hurtbox showing on top of our character, and if we move it follows us, right? Okay, so now we're going to set up a couple of states. We're going to add an attack and damage state, so that we can set up the animations as well. So let's do that. Let's do an attack state. Attack state. This is going to be import Spritekit and import Spritekit class attack state. Going to be IGK state. So for this one, we're going to set it up as we normally set up our states. So for example, we have our C node, the character node that we're going to be using. The init is going to no, this is init with node character node, and we set up our C node to be equal to the node. And we need to set up a couple of variables more. We need to say how much the active time of this attack is going to be. So active time. I'm programming to be just one type of attack, but obviously we need to change the code in a later date to be able to support multiple attacks with multiple active times and different hitboxes. But right now I'm just going to hard code the active time. We need also a private var last update time. It's going to be a time interval equal to 0, and we need to do the update method. And here we need to initialize our last update. So if self dot last update time equals 0, then we change it to be whatever interval we have right now. Okay, now that that's out of the way, we check if the active time is more than 0. And then we subtract whatever the last update timer is. Okay, and if we have the active time, okay, so before we do this, I'm going to show you the attack animation that we have. So we have it set up with these 4 frames, but the attack usually is separated in the wind up and the attack and the cooldown, right? So we only want these 2 frames to be the ones that have the attack. The wind up usually doesn't have an attack, neither the cooldown, right? So let's go to our attack state, and we're going to check one other thing. So if we see, we have 4 frames, and I set the duration to 0.4 so that each 0.1 is going to be one of these frames, right? So it's easy to see which frames are the ones that have the attack active. So we now check if active time it's less or equal than 0.3, and if the active time it's more than 0.1, then we know we're on our frames that have the attack, so we now can do our attack. So if we have to check if the hitbox has been created. If not, we will create a new one. So SKNode.create hitbox, and we're going to send a size of CG size width 20 and height 30. Let's do width 30 or 25. 25. SKNode. Okay. And now that we have created it, we're going to set our the X hit value. So we're going to set it as 2.0 times negative SKNode dot facing, so that we can point it to whatever direction is and the character node is facing. So and we will create what node facing. Okay, so maybe that. Okay, so SKNode dot hitbox, and we're going to set the hitstone to be a little bit less than the default value. And if we have the active value to be more or less than the frames that we want, we are going to check if we have the hitbox active. So if SKNode.hitbox is different than nil, we're going to remove it. So SKNode.hitbox remove hitbox remove hitbox not remove from parent, and we're going to set the hitbox here as nil, so we don't have a link to that reference. I mean a reference to that node. Node. And now that we have that, if the active time is now less than 0, so if we have subtracted enough seconds from it, then we need to change the attack value 1 to be false. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to mention. On the character node, we needed another variable called attack1, so that when we press the B button, you can add that now in character node, and in the player control component we added this couple of lines. So we need a new case, we check for the button B, and we change the attack flag to be true. So if the person is still pressing on the attack, we needed to set it so that he only attacks once, even though he keeps pressing the button. And then we just return to our normal state. Normal state dot self. And we reset the active time to be 0.4. And then lastly, we update the last update time to be seconds. Okay. That's our attack state. We're going to create a new one to be the hurt state. So I'm going to call it damage state. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set up our new our SKNode to be a character node, and we're going to init with node character node. Okay. And now the update method. And for this one, since we're going to be sent flying or sent backwards a little bit, then we need to reduce the speed on which we get back to 0, so that we don't have to rely on Spritekit's physics engine. So we're going to use again the function approach that we coded a couple of videos ago, and we're going to do approach 0 with it. So it's so SKNode.hSpeed, we're going to approach, the start is going to be whatever hSpeed we were sent flying with. We're going to end at 0, and we're going to be reducing it by 0.1, and we're going to reduce whatever the hitstone whatever the hitstone variable is going to be reduced by 1 as well. Okay, so the hitstone is going to be the timer that we need as information to know how long we can last in this state, and then we can return the control to either the player or the AI when we return to the normal state. So we're going to check if the hitstone if the hitstone is less or equal equal than 0, it means we have reached that point. So we don't care how much our H speed is at that point. We will set it at 0 no matter what. Then if that somewhat change the velocity on the x value, then we set it at 0 as well, and then we just change our state machine to enter the normal state. And then if we usually when you get hit, you will be squashed and stretched. So we're going to copy the code that we did before to approach once again our normal what's it called? Our normal, come on, our normal scale and our normal scale on the x value and on the y value. Also, we need to keep updating the position on our okay, so we need to move, so the same way we move on the normal state, and we need to, okay, I made a mistake by making this an optional. I shouldn't have. So and now we need to update our hurtbox position to be to be on whatever position we had it before. So on the x is going to be SKNode hurtbox dot x offset, and on the y is going to be SKNode hurtbox y offset. So we're going to fix all these validations, and we are set, and this is the damage state. So now that we have both, we need to on the normal state we need to be able to enter these two states. So for that we need to check. So we check if SKNode dot attack 1, and we just enter the state. So state machine enter attack state, and if we have been hit, SKNode dot hit, Then we will squash and stretch. We're going to make it a little bit bigger onto X and Y scale. We're going to change the H speed to be whatever the hit by whatever the hit had, the X hit had for us. We need to stun our character, so we need to set up that as well. So hit stun is going to be SKNode hit by hit stun. We need to check the phasing as well, so phasing is going to be SKNode hit by parent as character no, and phasing, and we're going to multiply it by negative. And okay, so we need to change the scale and X scale so that we the sprite is facing whatever the facing variable is. So SKNode facing, and we change the hit tag to be false so that we don't spend an infinite loop in there, and we just enter the damage state. Okay, so that's it for this one. And also on the character node we need to create the attack state and the damage state. And we add them here. Okay, so now have them both. Okay, so we need to have an enemy because we need to be able to hit something in there, but we also need a couple of components. We need the attack component, and we're going to set a enemy control component so that that's where we will be managing all the AI, but we will set the damage in there for the meantime. Okay, so we need to add a new file. Is going to be called attack component. this one is going to check. Okay, so let's add first the enemy component so that it will make better sense. Okay, so enemy control component. Okay, import and for this one, the way we will be checking, because we in Spritekit we need to know against who we are intersected. Like if we have a node, we need to send the node that we want to check if it's intersecting with or not. So in that case, we need to have a list of all the enemy hurtboxes that are in the scene, and then we will cycle through them. So on the game scene, we need to have a list of all the enemies. So I already created it. The enemies is going to be a list of character nodes, and that way we can add ourselves with the enemy control component to that list, and that way in the attack component we can check against that list. So we're going to set var SKNode as a character node, and we're just going to go to the update. This part is going to be just to see if we have what's it called, the character node set up, and if not, we're going to grab it using the GK component. So I'm just going to copy that code because it's we have written it several times already. So we have 1 and 2. Okay, so now that we have our node component, we can change the variable to be, I mean the character node to be whatever the node component dot node character node has. So now that we have our character node, we can set its state machine set hops state machine like we did with the character. We're going to set its hurtbox so that we have a hurtbox that we can hit. So it's going to be 20 and 45 or 35. I think that's a good size. And we need a couple of things here, because we need to keep updating the state machine. We can update it here, so we're going to do just that. So but we need to, now that we're setting up as the node, so if let parent, we're going to add it to the, we're going to add the hurtbox to the enemy, I mean the character node to the enemies list inside the game scene. So parent scene is going to be SKNode parent as a game scene, and we're going to parent scene dot state dot enemies append this character node. And now that that's out of the way, we will update its state machine every time. So SKNode else. So if we have a character node, we're going to update its state machine. Yeah, okay, so now that we have this enemy in there, we can attack it with the attack component. So let's go to the attack component, and we're going to copy the setup code. So we're going to set the var character node. It's a character node, and we will copy the update method. So this is the same thing that we did with the other enemy control. So set up our character node so that we have it here. But now we're going to check every frame if the character node is on the attack state in the state machine. So current state is attack state. Then if we have a hitbox, then we can start checking if it's in contact with another hurtbox. So we need to get the scene. So if let scene be SKNode parent scene, then if okay, so we will cycle through the enemies. So for enemy in scene.enemies, we will check if it's intersecting. So if SKNode dot hitbox intersects with another node, so we're going to have our enemy dot hurtbox if it's intersecting that, then we're going to check again if it's in the ignore list. So if the hitbox dot ignore list contains enemy dot hurtbox, and if so, if it doesn't, like here is a negative, if it doesn't contain it, then we're going to add it. So SKNode dot hitbox ignore list append enemy dot hurtbox, and we're going to hit it. So enemy dot hit by this hitbox, and we're going to set it its flag that it was hit to be true. Okay, so that was a lot of ifs, but now we keep checking, like if it's in the ignore list, then it's ignored until the hitbox is nil, and then it keeps just cycling through here, and if it's not, there's nothing, then it skips it already. A couple of things more. We need to add the animations in the animation component so that we have we're going to check if it's in the states that we set up. So if it's in the attack state, then we're going to play the animation with string attack, and if it's on the damage state, then we will play the animation damage. Okay, so I think we are ready. Yeah, so now we need to add our we need to set up our character so that we have the attack component, and we need to grab an enemy, right? So where did that go? Okay, and this is new. So a color sprite, yeah, we increase its Z position so it's in front. Let's put it on 4. We're going to name this enemy. We're going to set it up as a character node. And we're going to we also need to add its PhysicsBody, so it's going to be a bounding rectangle. We don't want it to be rotating, and we're going to set it the same as the other one. And we're going to add the enemy control component and the animation component. And we're going to set its character type to 2. Also, we're going to set its size to be 50-50. And yeah, I think that should work. Let me think if we have not missed something. The player. Okay, if it doesn't run, then we will check what we did wrong. Okay, so we put it here, and we have our character sprite, and we have our attack. It's a little bit big, but you can change the size later, and then we will see if we are hitting the enemy. So if we are here, then we don't hit it, but if we are right next to it, bam. And the stone state, it works, and we're sending it back a little bit. So I hope you enjoyed it, and this is useful for you to to create your games, and see you next time.